Jesus freak here. I don't like to have to talk about political stuff here because I know there's a sharp difference between my politics, the politics of my viewer base. And I understand that. You know, I get it. I was raised in a far-right conservative family. And I still have a lot of political persuasions that would be considered, at the very least, conservative. So, you know, if I'm getting into the weeds here, you know, this is something that's going to be controversial to say, you know. A lot of people, like, you know, why should my money go to helping people who can't help themselves, or whatever. You know, there's a lot of talk about how SSI is a waste, and how people think it should be done away with, how most people they think who use it aren't really disabled or whatever. And honestly, I don't like to see myself as disabled. But at the same time, it's, you know, I happen to have conditions that make it difficult or impossible to get a job in this world. And some of it's because when you're different, or when you have disabilities, you become a liability to a potential employer. They don't want to deal with that. So even if you theoretically can work, they don't want to trust you with it. They don't want to, you know, deal with the possibility of, you know, if something happens, they got to deal with the liabilities, you know, the insurance payouts, whatever. Whatever it might cost for, like, workman's comp if something happens to you. So they'll just take the easy route and say, nah, we don't want you. And then there's, of course, the more obvious problem that maybe your disabilities make it hard or impossible to actually do normal work in certain cases. And there's a few things we see. Occasionally we're going to see victim blaming. You know, they should try harder. They should, you know, accusations that they're faking it. Especially if it's disabilities that aren't necessarily visible. Heart problems. Other sorts of infirmities that aren't necessarily the type that require physical devices to help you. And there's worse. There's some people go far enough that say, you know, these people who can't live without our help are sucking the air out of them. And their suggestions range on one end from just let them die. On the other end, and this has been a problem both on the left and the right, and it was originally, more a left-wing thing. If you can believe this, say, let's just euthanize them, put them out of the damn misery. Like an old rabid dog. That was seen as the humane solution. Until someone got some funny ideas in the late 30s. And decided to put a few million people he thought were less human than human out of their misery. And so we started trying to come up with other ways to deal with things that didn't require thinking of people as, old dogs to be taken out back and shot. Just because they weren't as capable of being productive members of society as everyone else. When in fact, a lot of us still are, within some limitations, and the fact that, there's some things that we're not as necessarily able to do. The other stance that I've seen is, and this is probably the more common one nowadays, is just to act like we don't exist. Like we just don't matter enough. We don't cross your minds. Or try to pass off the buck, Why can't they handle it? Why can't charities handle it? Why can't churches handle it? The resources just don't exist unless they're pulled together. Even if more people gave to charities, if more people gave to food banks, if more people gave to like NIACAP or whatever, that help these people. Which NIACAP, when I worked for them through welfare for a couple years, about 25 years ago, they were a big help to me. But charities can't handle that. That's just too much need. To focus on the individual. And this is what a lot of people do, They can do it. Let them do it. Let people who give a damn do it. But we're all in this together. And frankly, it just works better if there is sort of, a common pool for those who need it. And that's what we try, I think. That's what programs like SSI and food stamps are meant to be. There's been these canards for decades about people who, been abusing the system. The old welfare queen 45 years ago. And they've tightened up all the programs. These days it's very difficult to abuse a welfare program. They have their eyes on you. They're monitoring everything you're doing with the program, you know. There's pretty heavy means testing. And the way the food stamp program is currently administered, it's next to impossible to abuse it. And of course, if someone were going to be like, oh, you know, I'm living high off the hog, I'm buying lobsters and strip steaks on food stamps, you know, other than just once in a blue moon, because, I mean, hey, we can't live pared to the bone for their whole lives. That's how it's been hard for me to save up any sort of money to do anything. They're going to know. It's not going to go undetected. And it is going to be, you know, it is going to be prosecuted. It's like with the current system, you're not going to abuse it. It's almost impossible. And frankly, I'd rather see small amounts of abuse than homeless people starving, because people are more concerned with I, me, mine than about the people who slip through the cracks. And the reason I say all this is because I am one of those people who frequently slips through the cracks. Because maybe my disabilities aren't as severe as most people have to rely on it. But they're still there. And they are disabilities. And in this political climate, I have occasionally been worried about the possibility that with the people holding the levers of power, either passively not giving a damn about the less fortunate, or actively thinking, you know, we're not worth supporting. Sometimes I'm afraid that the grace of others won't be enough. On the other hand, you know, you could say, well, God's not going to take me away before he's ready. Well, we have to see how things go. This one Brazilian guy said once, I feed the poor, they call me a hero. I ask why the poor have no food, they call me a damn communist. Anyway, Jesus freak out.